Whatever you are, whatever you do, that has a precedent, and that has a precedent. It's a chain of cause and effect. You cannot claim any ownership of anything about yourself or about this world. You are not above anybody at all, and nobody in the world is above you. If you have more to lose, then you are lower in the hierarchy. If you have less to lose, you are higher up in the hierarchy. Before we begin, I do want to sincerely thank Janil, Sheetal, and Sirisha, because after last meeting, they made some donations. Thank you so much. It really helps us. So yeah, I'm sincerely grateful for that. So now today, I have yet another very, very important principle for you and an interesting homework also. And I know initially the ones that I'm talking about, the principles, they are kind of larger principles. And it's sometimes even for me, it's hard to find out how do you actually get them into specific behaviors. But that's what I like to do. So you would find today's session also interesting. So those people who are joining new, please stay till the end, because towards the end, I will be discussing how can you actually apply it in your lives. And I'll send you home with some homework. And those who don't know, I'll say one more thing, that after each meeting, I do a follow-up meeting on Thursday. And in that meeting, what I do is whoever does the homework, we have a separate meeting. So usually 20 or 15 to 20 people turn up and we discuss in detail how are they able to apply it. And I answer more and more questions related to today's meeting. So right now it's Saturday, then follow up on Thursday. So those who are new, please do make sure that you stick around for that link, and ultimately you can join that Thursday meeting as well. Yeah, timings for Thursday is the same. Yes, it's 3 p.m. on Thursdays. Yeah. Okay, so today I have something that is very close to my heart as a principle. And all of you might have heard of this principle, but I'm pretty sure most people don't understand it fully. So the principle is very simple, actually, that all humans are created equal. Now, it may sound very cliche. It may sound like the most stereotypical thing. You hear that you hear that everywhere. But I'm sure as we go forward in this session, you'll realize how even you, in your own life, you're not treating people equally, because there's always something that can be done here. And I'll discuss that soon. I would be doing these online meetings with you all regularly for some time. If you wish to attend these meetings live on Zoom, save the details. If you need reminders, we also send invitations to you personally on email and Telegram app. To get reminders, do the following. But before I get into how all humans are created equal, I want to talk about how all humans are also unequal. Okay. And let's talk about the inequality first, and then we'll go on to the equality part also. So let's do a small thought experiment here. And I want everybody to think about this, like go with me on this and see where you reach in what are your conclusions, okay? So let's imagine that there are like 1,000 babies, completely newborn babies, right? And those newborn babies are now put in a jungle. No parents, nobody with them, no caretakers at all, just 1,000 babies. And now they have unlimited access to food so they can survive, and there are no other animals, okay, so which can kill them. So they have no physical danger and they have access to food and water, and they can find a way to survive. So now after 10 years, now we just leave them be, okay? And after 10 or 12 years, as they're reaching, let's say their teenage time, we go back to the jungle and we look at those all those babies. Now, first question is that, do you think all of those babies, because there has been no culture, no parenting, no external supervision, would they all be same or would they be different? So first, that's the question. So I want, if you can write it in the chat, what do you think? Would they be very, very similar? Okay, we know there won't be clones, but would they be very, very similar, or would they be very, very different? It's like on a scale. So I want to hear your judgment on this. So I think 3 similar, 3 different. They would still be very, very similar. They will all be different, similar, different. So we have a divided audience here. Different, similar. Okay. Now, I asked this question because this question pushes you to think about the role of society and the role of parenting. Uh, I think it's a 50-50 between different and similar from all of you. And those people who say they're going to be very, very similar, to them, it probably feels like that the society does not have that much of a role. And no, sorry, spoke the other way, that society has a lot of role. That's why we are all very different. And if the society is taken away, then they're going to be very, very similar. So those people think that society doesn't have much role. And people who think they're very different, they'll think that inherently they were born different and there's no society and they turn out to be different. So these are two very different worldviews. And this tells us this balance between two elements, which is biology versus environment. Like, which is more powerful? Is your biology more powerful? Then everybody will be different. And if the environment is more powerful, then they will all be same. So now my answer to that is, of course, there is no fixed answer here. There is no that, okay, this is all biology or this is all environment. Of course, it's a mix of those. But what could be the ratio also? And this is also something to understand. But before I even get into that, I go to the next question, which could be the political question here. Are they, all those 1,000 babies, are they equal or are they unequal in status? So some people are saying that they will be different, right? And anybody would say that they're not exactly close. So we will find some variations there. Like some will be more healthy, some will be more aggressive, some will be, let's say, introverts, extroverts. We'll find some variation there. But the question is, are they all equal or not? Yeah, so I already have some answers, which is some are saying unequal, and status means, okay, you can think of it like this. If that jungle was to be turned into a country, how would we treat them? Do we all treat them equally or unequally? Equal rights, okay. Equal. And this is the easy answer, right? Because we know this. We know this because in our country, it's been taught to us in our education also that we are all created equal because we all have those fundamental rights. So we all know that in terms of status, in terms of our core existence, we are all equal. So my question then is, now, given the view that there will be variations, and I'll trust me, anybody who thinks that they'll be completely similar, they're wrong. And I'll tell you why. There are psychological reasons for that. So there is this old notion of tabula rasa. I don't know if you are aware of that term. And that idea is that babies are born with a blank slate and the society writes everything on them, and thus they are created. So if the society writes something different, the babies will be different. And that notion of tabula rasa, the blank slate, it's completely wrong. It's not the case at all. So the reality is that babies are born with a lot of inherent biological traits, and some studies have shown, and in fact, from behavior genetics, that almost 50% of your long-term personality and intellect, that's actually biological, things that you were born with. So what that tells us that no matter what you do in society, you will always find a lot of variation. Okay, so people who said different, they are actually more right here. And people who said similar, they're probably wrong. And not probably, they are definitely wrong, because think about this. So many societies, when they started out, there was no culture. Ultimately, people create their own culture. And if you think that culture affects everything, who created the culture? And why are cultures different? Because humans are different. So it all comes down from those inherent differences. So now, my first question is, if we were to form a government and turn this forest into a country, should we all treat them equally? And many of you are saying equal rights, okay? But then there's the second question. If yes, what's the basis? Why should we treat them equally when all of them are completely unequal in every sense? When I say every sense in the sense, you can take their height, you can take what they eat, you can take how they talk, you can take how much they're active. You can take every trait. And if you know statistics, if you've heard of normal distribution, what that tells us is in most traits, in most things, there is this variation in the population. So when everybody is unequal in every form, what is the basis of treating them equally? So now I want you to write that. What do you think is the basis? Why treat them equally? Let's have some answers here. You said due to fundamental rights in our society, and my question is why? Why should people have fundamental rights? Because fundamental rights are given because we assume that we are equal. That's why we have those fundamental rights. But I'm saying we are not equal. Why are we treating each other equally? Basic needs are same, equal opportunities. We will feel happy by treating each other similar. Treat equal as human beings, not on qualities. To give them an illusion of equality. Okay, that's a unique answer because there are no factors. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Because there are no factors which judge them unequal in jungle, unlike our society which judges. You would be surprised, by the way, how much those kids would be judging one another just after a few years. So children can be very, very nasty, by the way. You don't think they are just innocent beings. They can be cruel, they can be nasty. So there'll be plenty of judgment in that jungle too. Personality. Okay, so I'll get to some of the basis why equality is a natural result, a natural conclusion. Like, I don't want us to think that we are treating other people equal because, oh, we have a good heart, we are amazing people, and take the credit for it. You know what? I could treat somebody unequally, but I do it because I'm a good person. There is actually a fundamental basis. If you understand that well, you cannot reach any other conclusion. Okay, and this is what I wanted to share today. So the similarity is, and first I'll say the line, I don't know how many people will understand what's behind this, but the first line is that the similarity, the basis for equality is one major similarity. And that similarity is that none of those 1,000 babies created who they are. And I'll go on to explain this, but this is a very, very important line. None of them created who they are, who they were, and who they are. So what that tells us is that from the moment that they were born, and then till the moment that they were 10 or 12, or even if they grow into their old age, they cannot actually take responsibility for anything, because if you think about this, they did not choose to be born. They did not choose to go to the jungle. They did not choose to interact with those people. And ultimately, they are responding to whatever is happening around them. So in that sense, if you think about this, nobody can own any of the choices. They are not responsible for their physical attributes that they were born with. They are not responsible for their mental attributes. They are not responsible for the fact that they were put in a jungle without their choice. They cannot own a single action or thing which makes them who they are. And in that sense, all of them are simply products of their biology and environment. They did not choose the biology. They did not choose the environment. They are just products of their biology and environment. And so even if you are the smartest, best looking, healthiest kid, you had nothing to do with it. So you cannot ever claim to be special. There is absolutely no claim that you can make, because you can make any claim about yourself. And if I go back in the past enough, we'll get to a point where you had nothing to do with it. Try to make any claim about yourself that, okay, this is what I've done. You can make, oh, I made this amazing choice. Okay, let's go back. Where did that come from? Then where did that come from? Where did that come from? And we'll reach your childhood, and we'll reach when you were in the womb of your mother, right? So in that sense, once we realize, so this is a very philosophical thing to understand. And this is almost the question of free will, because it almost tells us that, do we even have free will? Can we even make choices at all? And I won't get into that debate right now, but what I'm telling you is, whatever you are, whatever you do, that has a precedent. And that has a precedent. It's a chain of cause and effect. And because it is so, you cannot claim any ownership of anything about yourself or about this world. And this is why we are all equal. Because even though we are different, but as an individual, we cannot claim to be special. And once you understand this, once you grasp this concept, how can you possibly differentiate between two people in the core status? And that's why we say fundamentally, we are all equal. Because there is no basis for saying that I can be special and I can be treated with any privilege. And that's why in the eyes of law or in the eyes of a country, we say that all people are equal. So that is the core basis. Now, there is, of course, second basis, which some of you did discover, did say in the chat, and I'm going to still say it because it's an important one. Even though on every trait that you can think about, there will be variation in the population. even think about this, even twins differ on many things, right? They share so much of their DNA, even they differ, even siblings differ so much. What does that tell us? That inequality, the differences are inherent in life, but there are similarities too. And some people wrote that. What are those similarities? Similarities is that if you go down to the absolute basic, the needs are very, very similar. So we all want food, but the food could be different. One wants an ice cream, other wants maybe a kheer or something else. So the idea is we all want food. We all want to survive. We all want to, let's say, in this case, grow, right? We all want to self-actualize, achieve something. But how to do that? Some people want to do that by helping other people. Some people want to do that simply by working on themselves. And some people want to do that a mix of both and in different degrees. But the similarity is that deep down, we were all very, very similar. Okay. So these similarities that we have in the fundamentals, that our survival, our desires, our even capabilities. Think about this. All of us have intelligence, but it's in different degrees. So what makes us similar is that we do have intelligence, we can solve problems, we can learn, but the speed of learning, but what we can learn, our interests of learning, they will differ. So there are similarities and there are differences. And this is why when you say universals, you go across in any culture, you would find people doing and enjoying similar things. Why are you able to enjoy movies from Hollywood, right? Why are you able to actually listen to the news in the Middle East and still feel similar things? Because deep down, we know that all of us can suffer, and all of us that need to not want to suffer, to survive, to have children, to have fun. And in that sense, we're all very similar. And because deep down, we're all very, very similar in those needs, we have to treat each other equally. And if there is any society, any country that we build today, it must treat people equally, because we are inherently deep down very, very similar. So once you understand this balance of differences and similarity, it makes your interaction with other people and it makes your perception about people very, very different, which is because so many people can have stereotypes like, oh, Americans are like that, people in England are like that, and people, even in caste systems, okay, Baniyas are like that, Punjabis are like that. And when we make those stereotypes, for us, differences are so enhanced. They're like, okay, they're just like different breeds. They act different. Like Muslims are different, Christians are different, Hindus are different. In any kind of grouping, you can really exaggerate the differences, and you forget to realize that deep down, we are very, very similar. Yes, practices could be different. The hair oil that they use could be different. The food that they're eating could be different. The clothing that they wear could be different. But the core desires are very, very similar. And that's what kind of unites us. And that also becomes the basis of equality. Okay. So these two are kind of big ones. I'm not saying there are not more, but I just wanted to highlight one of the most important ones. So now the thing is, since all of us are similar, it actually gives us a benefit as a society. We can come up with values and norms which can be applicable to all. Like when you're talking about large societies where there are millions and billions of people, right? You simply cannot take into account each person's individuality, right? You cannot do that because at least we don't have the technology for that yet. Maybe in future we'll be able to. So you need to make some large scale, broad stroke rules that are applicable to all. And one of those fundamental rules is that we are all equal. Because if you allow other people to do this, you know what? If your two children are different, you can treat them differently. It can very quickly turn into something very, very toxic. And the same for society. If the government can treat us differently on their judgment, so it can very, very quickly turn into something disastrous, because then they can basically give privilege to anybody on their own judgment. So to not let that happen, we say whether you're a politician or whether you are a student or whether you are a poor person or rich person, if you do a crime, you will be tried in the court. Now, how much that is applied, that's another story. But right now we're talking philosophically, that in the eyes of the Constitution, in the eyes of the law, we see that we're all equal. Now, these were some of the larger basics, obviously. So now I'll get to the part where I feel that even though you may know this and understand this very quickly, okay, this is so simple, but Why was I saying that you don't fully understand it? Because how in your life you could actually be missing out on this basic principle or violating this principle. Because equality is not just about how the government or an institution or society will look at the citizens. Equality comes in every area of your life. I'll give you a few examples, like in what areas. For example, it could be simply upper caste, lower caste, right? The day that you have to decide, okay, that your child is going to be married, the question will come, right? Which caste do they belong to? And what if the caste is SC or ST? Okay, you can see the reactions in the houses today of elders, and that inequality immediately comes. Then it could simply be rich or poor, how you treat people who are poorer. Like I've seen many examples where, and you could find that in yourself, by the way, and maybe you have done this too, where if you have a rich relative, somebody really rich, when you meet them, you're all good, you're happy, smiling, and you're almost flattering them. But then if there is not so rich relative as somebody poorer, you don't give them as much time, you don't care as much. They call you thrice, they're like, okay, kal call kar lenge. And if is the rich relative, you're like, oh, you know what, leave everything, let me talk to them. Because now these things happen. You don't even realize it's happening, why it's happening, and you don't even question, what am I doing here? And what does that tell about my deeper values? But this happens. Like literally people are, okay, make richer friends. And that tells you something, that you have this need to move higher up in the society and how you look at people who have less money. So rich and poor. Then there is boss and employee, the most typical example, where bosses sometimes simply, they act like they own the employee. And they're like, I have this separate status. You cannot say anything. You cannot question me. How dare you even doubt what I said? So a boss could be making this mistake of really thinking that they are somewhere higher up in the clouds. Okay. And that happens all the time. Then there is parent-child. Now, parents make these mistakes all the time. How? Oh, I created you. I am feeding you. Okay. Who the hell are you to talk back at me? Like, you didn't have any status. You were not here in this world. I brought you to this world. I own you. So parents make that mistake very, very commonly. They think that their status is higher because they created that human being, right? They make that mistake. Then if you talk in the larger sense, you can say, of course, a government official, they can make that mistake because they're higher up. So for example, you must have seen MLAs, MPs, when they are crossing a toll booth. Oh, how dare you ask me to pay the toll? And they beat up the toll guys. What's happening there? They're not treating themselves equal to anybody else, right? Again, inequality. Then racism. What happens in racism? White, black racism that has happened in so many countries. And even in India, if you think about this, colorism, where fairness creams are there. So you treat somebody with a darker complexion slightly differently. Right, I'm not talking about the attraction part. I'm actually talking about how people get discriminated on the basis of that. Again, that happens. Good looking, bad looking. Another big way of differentiation, where people sometimes think that if somebody is good looking, there's this halo effect that, oh, maybe they are more talented. Or maybe while they are hiring, sometimes people tend to prefer good looking people. And by the way, there are researches for it, that good-looking people end up getting more liked by the society as opposed to the less good-looking people, not so good-looking people. So there's an inequality where you're not treating people equally. And then there is a very toxic one, which is husband-wife. Now, everybody knows husband-wife are supposed to be equal, but then there are households, many households, where husbands come in with this attitude. The husband is the leader, the patriarchal society. Now, thankfully, many people are questioning it, but it still exists. They think that I must be able to make the final choice because that's how I saw it. That's how my dad did it. That's how my grandfather did it. Right? So again, that example. Then successful, unsuccessful. If you have done something well in your life, suddenly you feel that you're above people. You're above the law. You can do anything. Right? Successful people tend to put themselves on a pedestal, and you tend to put successful people on a pedestal, like I discussed in the first example. And then sometimes inequality could simply be my kid versus somebody else's kid. Just because it's my kid, there's something special about it. So the same mistake, if your kid makes it, oh, that's fine, you understand it. If the same mistake your neighbor's kid makes it, you know what a problematic, devilish child. So the inequality can come in any form. And the idea is that, are you able to treat the other person exactly like yourself? Can you keep that value constantly in your mind? And I gave all of these examples because I'm pretty sure if you introspect and if you think about this, you will find so many examples where you're doing it unconsciously. You don't even realize how you have treated one group of people less than other group of people on some basis, on some criteria that you don't even realize. And that affects your relationship with them, that affects the happiness that you enjoy in life, that affects how the society is, right? And for a better society, we should be able to keep questioning what we are doing, keep introspecting. Are we able to treat everybody equally or not? Okay. Now, if see the technically, I understand that, like I said, there are going to be differences, and that's completely fine. And you should, it's not like you should treat everybody completely the same way. But deep down, when you think of people, you must be able to give them the same basic fundamental dignity or respect, which you would want to give yourself. And that's the core thing here. Okay. So after all these examples, my core conclusion here is that you are not above anybody at all, and nobody in the world is above you. You have to really, really absorb these two lines. And I'm going to repeat them. You are not above anybody at all, and nobody in the world is above you. So in whatever area are you in your life, whatever area, there are no exceptions here. Again, even if you're talking to the richest, most powerful person, you should not feel that person is above you. And even if you're talking to the poorest, most unprivileged person, you should not feel that you are above them. And we're all completely equal. And once you absorb this fact, your behavior naturally changes. And now this is the fundamental. And I say I briefly want to acknowledge the fact that there are cultural hierarchies. Like, I'm not saying that in a company everybody is equal. Of course, there are going to be hierarchies where ultimately that final decision will be taken by the boss. Let's say in the military, there are higher ranks and lower ranks. It's not like anybody can just make decisions and that will be the final decision. So what I call these cultural hierarchies. We create them to solve some problems, to do some things. Even in the household, parent, children, they do have a hierarchy, because you cannot allow the child to take all the decisions because they're not ready yet. They've not seen the word enough. They can do something dangerous. So there is going to be this temporary hierarchy in the house. But the question is, how seriously do you take these hierarchies? The problem begins when you start to believe it inside, when you start to actually feel that I am above in those hierarchies, when you take it to your ego, when you actually start to feel special. Oh, I am the boss, I am the parent, I am this, I am that. The problem begins and the other side is, if you put somebody above you, the problem begins when you make somebody your God, your hero. Now you can't question them. Now, whatever they do is right. Now you're going to protect them at no cost, right? If you put somebody else above you, when you give someone this divine power, when you make yourself believe that you're less than someone, like they're actually a different breed, that also is a problem. So if you systematically put people down and feel special and above, that's a problem. If you systematically put somebody above you, that's a problem. And by the way, this happens. So I want to recall this thing, like in school. So there were always the kids. So I was usually the academic studious one. Okay. So I did not get into trouble. And that's how I was taught. Okay. Just don't get into too much trouble. Just find your own way. And basically I never got bullied also. So I never had to face that problem, but I was observing something. What I observed was that there were kids who were like outgoing, who were kind of the bullies, not exactly, because thankfully in our school, there was not a problem of bullying, but there were people who were dominating, right? Kids in the class who were dominating. Like if they come into the bus, if they say you have to move out from the window seat, you have to get up, because you know that you can't mess with them, right? If they say, I want to sit in this bench, you kind of have to move. So in our school, they weren't exactly coming after you to beat you up or take something from you. But if there's the ground, if we are playing volleyball, if they come in first, they'll play first. So we knew that there was some hierarchy. Now, what I also noticed that those same people in some different contexts became actually very, very weak and flattering. जिसको हम कहते हैं ना, जिस तरह से हिंदी क्या the word that we use was, हाँ, कि जिन लोगों को पसंद है किसी पर रूल करना, वो फिर जाके किसी की चाटते भी हैं. That's the word we use in our school. I know it's a very crude word, but the idea was that जिनको पसंद है रूल करना, वो कहीं ना कहीं रूल होते भी हैं. So, and जो ultimately माफिया और जो basically criminal organizations भी होती है, वहां पर you may enjoy a lot of power, but ultimately you have to suck up to somebody else. And that's a hierarchy. So when I observed that, I realized that, is this a game you want to play? where you do enjoy some power. You feel special because I can now give orders to these other kids and they listen to me. But then I know that there will be bigger powers than me, and then I will have to go suck up to them. Do I want to play this game or not? And I realized I did not, and I just completely stepped out of that. If you find these videos helpful, you can support me by donating something, anything. Go to www.shridharlifeschool.com/donate. Those who have been contributing, I'm truly grateful for your support. Please continue to do so. The fact is that if you get stuck into this game where you do want to rule people, if you do want to have power, you will have to give power to somebody else. And if you step out of the game, you come to a level playing field, a flat field, which is nobody's above you, nobody's below you. You don't have to give power to anybody. You don't have to take away power from anybody else. And that's a much better society, and that's a much better life. Okay. And so this is the rule there. Now, the question is, how do you now apply this? I know if you understand it well, you'll be able to apply it, but I still want to get to the specifics of it, that how you can actually making these mistakes unconsciously. So you can start with two things, two ways you can apply it, and that would really reflect those equality values. So in two ways, people often make the mistake of treating other people unequally or dominating. First, I'm going to talk about the domination, where how you make requests versus how you make demands. So the question is, when you ask people to do things around you, how do you do it? Is that a request or a demand? That's one sign how you're treating that other person. So and the way to understand whether it's a request or a demand is to ask yourself, what if the other person says no? Your reaction will tell if it was a request or a demand. If you can take the no easily and walk away smiling, it means it was a request. But if you fight back, if you get aggressive, if you get annoyed, it means it was actually a demand. You were not prepared to take a no for an answer. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, for people around you, whether it's your spouse, it's your friend, it's your child, even it's your mother or father, are you making requests or are you making demands when you deal with them? Are you giving them orders or are you giving them suggestions? And that tells us what is the status that you think deep inside that you hold. And as soon as you give an order, as soon as you give a final instruction, which you can't take no for, you have put yourself somewhere above unknowingly. And this is something that you need to be very, very conscious of. And to have healthy relationships, to have a good life, you must make sure that as much as possible, you focus on requests and be able to understand that other people can say no. Okay. And of course, there will be exceptions to these things, which I'll discuss later. But right now, I'm talking about the overarching broad stroke philosophy that you need to have in life. Another thing which kind of talks about that status thing, that equality thing, is the tone and the language that you use. Because if you think about this, most of the fights that happen, they're not about what you say, it's about how you say it. It's the age-old example, right? Where you say, if you ask me nicely, I can do anything. But if you use that tone, forget everything. I'll never do anything for you. And why some people completely resist orders, even in families, even in relationships or anything, because the way they asked you, the tone that they used, or you use sarcasm with me, or forget. Now I won't even do it for a week. Even if it leads to some loss, how dare you talk to me that way? So your tone, your sarcasm, your language, like you have to do it versus can you do it? Now, your tone reflects many things. And I'll talk about two major things that your tone reflects. One is your internal experience. Like a tone tells us about your internal emotions also. Like if you're annoyed, if you're angry, if you're disappointed, your tone will reflect it. Your language will reflect it, right? Because कर दो ना, जाओ ना, हो जाएगा ना. So अब तुमने बात, और क्या होता है जब तुम दूसरे लोगों से बात करते हो ना, when you're about to tell the story to somebody else, you're like, all I said was, please turn on the fan. But in the original incident, you said, why can't you turn on the fan? Don't you see it's so hot? So turn the fan, you idiot. And when you're telling the story, you forget the idiot part. You say, all I said was, please turn on the fan. So the whole difference was about that tone, because that tone changed everything. Because that tone changed the status also. When you use that tone with somebody, and that's the second point, the tone also tells about not just your internal experience, the tone tells us about your status. What is the status that you're taken? Because if your status is equal, your tone will be, can you do it? Will you be able to do it? But if your tone is, if you're coming from this higher place where you can give those orders, your tone will be something different. So why do you think people have more problem with that? Because inherently, we want an equal status. We want our status to be maintained. So if somebody comes in with that tone, with that energy of us from this higher place, we want to immediately fight back, because then we don't care about the issue. We first want to maintain our status. We don't want to be ruled. We don't want to be dominated. We have this inherent need to go up and up in the hierarchy of status, not go below. So if you want to, so the moment somebody comes in from a higher place, it feels like an attack. It's like, now you've just put me in this lower place and I can't accept this. So take away your orders. I don't give a shit about anything. Now all I care about is maintaining my status right now, right? So this is where you get to, and this is why in relationships it's super important that that status is maintained, and through your tone, through your language, the way you request, that conveys the other person what is the status that you are maintaining. Is it equal or is it unequal? So if you really want to practice equality, you have to work on your tone, your language, and how you make request demands. And my final homework will be actually around that only. But this is going to be very, very difficult for you to apply. And I'll tell you why. Because the way you talk, when you are emotional, when you're angry, annoyed, it's almost automatic for you. It's not like you decide how you want to talk. You just completely say, you blurt things out. And that's why it's so hard to stop and think, okay, what am I doing here? And what does that imply? So now that you know the implication of your tones, you have to now then step back and find a way. So a great example there would be, that could help you. So when you attend a university, especially in India, and you're talking to a teacher, now teachers can be sometimes very annoying, right? Like they can give you useless homeworks, which you know it's, and they can sometimes mark you differently. But no matter what happens, you go, sir, please, ma'am, this, ma'am, that. Behind the back, you're abusing them. But when you're talking to them, please, because you know that you cannot change the status there. You know that in that cultural hierarchy, their status is above you, because in the final exams, they can mark you and they can give you a D or an F. So you continue to maintain that status. So why am I bringing this up? Because when you realize that I have to maintain this status, you find a way to find the right tone, find the right language. You don't blurt out things in front of a teacher. You don't blurt out things in front of your boss. You don't blurt out things in front of somebody who can do something to you, where you have something to lose. Because there you know that I cannot violate the status here. But the same principle is completely forgotten when you're dealing with people close to you. Because there you don't care. You can use whatever tone, whatever language you comes to mind, because where is this person going to go? They can't run away from the house, and you know your parents can't kick you out of the house. You know the children won't leave you, so you do whatever you want. But ultimately you pay the cost for it also in terms of your happiness and the relationship. Okay, so this is why what I'm trying to say is you have the capability. Once you realize that I have to maintain an equal status, you have the capability to find the right tone and language for it. But you have to have the intention for it. And this session was done to create that intention so that you know that I have to do that. Okay. So I'm going to now briefly touch upon cultural hierarchies, because that would be the next natural question. Yes, we try to treat everybody equally, but what if there are genuinely differences? Where you do have to take lead? So cultural hierarchies are like boss versus employee. Now, I agree that boss and employee cannot be in the same chair. They cannot both make the final decision. Even parent versus child, even a higher rank versus lower rank in the army or anywhere else, teacher versus student, even sometimes big country versus small country. And sometimes there are natural hierarchies, like if you have more to lose, then you are lower in the hierarchy. If you have less to lose, you are higher up in the hierarchy, right? Even if you're doing a business deal, if you need something more, then it puts you in a weaker position. And suddenly your status becomes lower in terms of negotiation, what you can ask for. So we do have a lot of cultural hierarchies, and these hierarchies are, first of all, inevitable. I call them inevitable because if you take the example of that jungle of 1,000 babies, I can guarantee you that by the time you meet them at the age of 12, you will find, by the way, many, many hierarchies there. you will find a group of kids who would be completely ruling the area. You will find some group of kids who are providing some service. There are some kids who have taken over something else. So it's naturally going to come into that way. And some kids who are going to help you with, if there's a fight, will come as backup. So there are all kinds of different kids playing different roles. And the moment you get into any kind of role, there will be hierarchy, because some people will do it better than others. So it's like if I have two kids and I need a backup, I will go for which one? I will go for the stronger one. And there is a hierarchy, because now the stronger one for me is higher up in the status for me, because for me, I want that person first. So if you give that enough time, there will be hierarchy. Some people will be higher up in some status. Some people will be lower. Like if we take today's cultural hierarchies, let's say if there's music now, for a long while, and even kind of right now, if there's a hierarchy of singers, Arijit Singh, Sonu Nigam, Sunidhi Chauhan, these people are higher up in the hierarchies. And then there are newcomers, right? You can take a hierarchy in any field, business field. So in India, Ambani, Tata, and Anis, they are higher up in the hierarchy. And these hierarchies are inevitable, because some people are better at doing something. Some people are born with different capabilities. So hierarchies are inevitable, but they are useful also. So they're not just all evil. It doesn't mean that we just want everybody to be equal, but these hierarchies are useful also. Reason being, if you think about this, why are our military so efficient? Because there's a very clear hierarchy. The moment something needs to be done, it gets done. And sometimes even in a company, if everybody was equal, nothing will get done. They will keep arguing every day, every night, nothing will get done, because everybody has one vote. So hierarchies help you solve problems, move ahead, and decide who's going to lead. And hopefully, if this is a good hierarchy, the most meritorious person, the most capable person will rise to the top. But doesn't happen always. Cultural hierarchies are inevitable. They are useful, but they can also be misused. They can also get corrupted, which is sometimes non-talented people, non-meritorious people. They can go up to the top and they can misuse their power too. So that happens too. And they are enjoying that extra status and they're using it to their own advantage and not for the purpose that they were given. So how do you deal with cultural hierarchy? So you are in a cultural hierarchy too. If you're a parent, if you're a boss, or if you're in any form, if you have less to lose with anybody, even with your maid, you are kind of in a cultural hierarchy, because your maid needs probably you more than you need her. Sometimes it's the other way around too, by the way, when depending on which area are you living in. But in terms of, if you think about the actual loss, that if that transaction did not happen, for them, the job is almost, where do they get the next meal? And for you, you know what, a little bit of discomfort, we'll probably have to cook ourselves. In that sense, there's a hierarchy, because they need for their life, they need it way more than you need it for your life. That's how I mean it. So in these cultural hierarchies, what would be the guidelines? So if you are in any one, first of all, remember that even in this hierarchy, you are not a higher person. You are just higher in the decision-making hierarchy for this context. What I mean by that is, you're not above anybody. You don't own anybody. Just because you're the boss or the parent, temporarily or for this context, you've gotten the right to make decisions, the final decisions. So the hierarchy is in the decisions, not in the core status of us being humans. It doesn't make you a more special human. You're not above anybody. You have to remember that, not let it get to your head, that you just have the hierarchy for decision making. That's first. Then treat people lower in that decision making hierarchy as equal as possible. Now, of course, it can be applied according to your own judgment only, but that must be the tendency, as equal as possible, because inherently we are equal. And so use your authority or higher status only when absolutely necessary and on issues that are of high importance. Don't abuse your authority. Use it when absolutely necessary. The same goes for parenting, the same goes for bosses. So for example, technically you've heard of bosses like bosses who have made employees even do their laundry. You have to do it because you can't say no. They will ask interns to go buy vegetables for them, right? Because they know the intern can't say no, they can fire them tomorrow. And parents can sometimes abuse that authority too. They say, you know what, I can do whatever the hell I want, because where will this child go? So the idea here is you use your authority as little as possible, and only when absolutely necessary, okay? And only for issues which are genuinely important. Otherwise, treat your 2-year-old child, even 4-year-old child equal, just like yourself. that would be the general guideline. And so the summary would be tendencies towards equality. If you can use more and more equality to do things, that's the better way instead of using authority. So these are some of the guidelines for cultural hierarchies, which are inevitable. Okay. So with that, my core ideas, they've been shared, and now I'm going to get to the homework part briefly. So people who want to attend the Thursday session and discuss this in depth and for their own lives, I'm going to be asking 2-3 questions. In that form, there are 3 questions. First is share your key ideas that you learned. You can write those ideas, what you find important. But then 2 most important questions. First, you will have to share the name of 3 to 4 people in your life with whom you have been too authoritative or dominating at times. And for each of the person, you have to share some incident that with this person, I was too authoritative, too demanding, or too dominating at that time. With this person, I was that. And so that you can reflect. If you can't accept your mistakes, if you can't accept the fact that you have not violated this rule, if you can't accept that you have violated this rule, then you would not improve. So this is why the first thing is I want you to introspect and recall at least 3 of those people and those incidents where you have violated this rule of equality and where you didn't need to probably. And the last question would be, in these days after this session, what I want you to do is apply this learning and bring a change in your tone, in your language, and in the way you make requests or demands, and write those incidents. So don't write it for the past, write it for the next few days. So probably submit this form 2 or 3 days later while you try to bring that change in your tone, in your language, and in the way you request and make suggestions for those things, where you inculcate equality in your being, where you talk to people while giving them the vibe of equality, where you're living by the principle. And then write that, okay, this is how now I'm dealing with it. And I want to see that change in those examples. Okay. So this would be the homework. Whoever does it, I'll meet them on Thursday. Now I'll open it up to questions, and so first I would prefer that if you have questions related to this principle, I want to prioritize those questions. So try to first ask so that our understanding of this principle becomes deeper and much well rooted. Okay. So yeah. So first I'll go to Pankaj. Pankaj, I'm unmuting you.
Okay. Hi, Shridhar. Thanks for the wonderful session. My question is like, if I am in the receiving end, okay. Suppose normally with my boss. So suppose I have some scheduled team meetings, okay, and the boss is aware of it. But during the same meeting, he calls me and asks me, okay, please come up. You can leave the meeting and you can join me back. And I responded him 2-3 times, sir, I am already busy with the meeting. I cannot because I only initiated the meeting. If I cancel it, so the other colleague may not join again. But he insisted me, okay, you guys are only in the same place. You can do it again, or they may wait. So if I am accepting his call, so I am keeping them waiting for the call. So how to in this situation, how to handle this?
Yeah. So isn't it the most difficult age-old problem? Just unreasonable bosses, or bosses making sometimes ignorant, stupid choices, because that is one of the hardest things to deal with when you know something is clearly reasonable. Like, for example, in this case, you're taking care of the experience of the other team members, right? They should not have to wait. They should not have to go through the trouble. And the boss is just ignoring that, right? Boss is saying you, and they're taking care of their own preferences. So first, choose your bosses carefully. And the boss is too toxic, you can, of course, change. But trust me, there are, wherever you go, you will, at some point, you'll reach a stage, whoever is your boss, where you will find that boss unreasonable, idiotic, stupid. Like, that's the most common occurrence. But in these cases, you have to remember that when you are on the receiving end, the problem, if somebody does it, if somebody does not understand the principle well, so it's not your problem, first of all, right? And so the ignorance is on their part. By the way, this example is not that toxic, but it is something that can annoy you, right? Like, oh, why do this? But the question here is, you have to understand that they are also coming from a place of ignorance, and they have their own sets of ignorance, or they're just unaware of what the best ideas are. So you have to come from that understanding space where you go with the flow, because unless it's something very important, you have to pick your battles there. So raise your voice only on the most important ones. So for example, if there is complete abuse of their position, power, something really problematic, you must raise your voices. Otherwise, depending on who your boss is, you can give them feedback. So for example, in our company, we make sure that we stay very, very open to feedback. So if people in our organization, they come to us saying this is the problem or we want to change something, we are very open to it. But not everybody is, right? Some people will, if you tell your boss tomorrow, okay, sir, my suggestion is that let's do this way, he may completely get after your throat, like, who are you to tell me? You are my employee. Like, I decide what happens here. So that can completely go wrong. So that way you have to go with the flow, how your boss is. If they're taking feedback, you give it. Otherwise, it's okay, you move on. In the long run, by the way, people who don't respond well to environment, people don't listen to feedback, they naturally sometimes don't grow as much. So if you are a person who can learn well, who can do well in life, and as you go forward, you will be given more and more positions, and you can have your what I really meant to say is, your career is not dependent on any particular boss. So in the long run, you would be able to you would have a lot more opportunities to actually make your own shots, do things your own way as you go forward in the career. But until then, you have to make peace with the fact that it is an imperfect system. Your boss is imperfect, and in cultural hierarchies, there are imperfections, and you have to just accept them and make the most of it. And then you can use tact and sometimes good communication skills to find a way to express this to your boss. And there are ways of that too, where you can actually sit down with the boss in a nice positive moment. Sir, I have this suggestion, what do you think about this? And then you have to leave it to them. They may take it, they may not take it. If it's a smart boss, they will take it. If it's not one, they may not. But it's never a good idea for small issues to fight it. So it's going to be a mixture of accepting it, if it's normal things, and trying it in a nice way. And ultimately, if it's something too much, then you raise your voice, and the final step is you can leave, right? So you'll have to use your judgment. But again, no perfect solution will be there. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Next, I'll go to Ruchi. So tell me, Ruchi. Hi.
शुरू में बताया कि जब अगर हम 1000 बच्चों को फॉरेस्ट में छोड़ देते हैं, तो उसके लिए आपने आंसर मांगा कि सब लोग क्या सोचते हैं. कुछ ने कहा सिमिलर और कुछ ने कहा डिफरेंट. मेरा जवाब था सिमिलर. द रीजन बीइंग कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि सोशल कंडीशनिंग हमारी ज़्यादा हम लोगों को हायरार्की और डिफरेंट करना सिखाती है. तो और आपका कहना ये है कि जो डिफरेंट होते हैं, दोज आर क्लोजर टू द रियल आंसर और द रियलिटी. तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो हमारा जीन्स है या जो हमारी इनहेरेंट क्वालिटीज है, दोज प्ले मोर इम्पोर्टेंट रोल इन दिस लाइक इनइक्वालिटीज जो कि हमारी सोसाइटी में प्रिवेल करती है.
Oh yes, definitely. Like I said, the majority share, 50% at least, that share. In fact, the study has been that in the long run, your personality and intellect, 50% has been determined mostly by your inherent personality and your capabilities that you were born with. And yes, the culture, peers, luck factors, random things, random events, they make up for the rest of the 50%. And parenting is also a very small percentage. Sometimes it's said that parenting is less than 10%, the effect of parenting. So people overestimate the power of culture. So it's not zero, but it's not everything, right? So the majority is that. Yeah.
So my next question was actually related to parenting only, because मैंने रियलाइज किया है कि पेरेंटिंग में भी जब आप ये अपनी फैमिली में, अगर मैं बात करती हूँ, अगर हम अपनी फैमिली में देखते हैं कि हमारे जो और एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली है, उनका एक पैटर्न, बिहेवियर का पैटर्न है या करियर का पैटर्न है या उनका जो भी लाइफ लीड करने का पैटर्न है, तो वो फिर हमारे बच्चे क्या वो जीन्स में लेते हैं और उसी को फॉलो करेंगे, चाहे हम उनके कितने भी डिफरेंट, उनको डिफरेंट एनवायरनमेंट मिल जाए या उनको हम कितने भी सोशल कंडीशन करने की कोशिश करें.
नहीं, इसमें अगेन लाइक आई सेड, कोई भी फैक्टर 0 नहीं है और कोई भी फैक्टर 100 नहीं है. सो इट्स अ मल्टीफैक्टोरियल इक्वेशन. लाइक देयर आर मल्टीपल फैक्टर्स और सबका रोल है. तो हमको अपने एफर्ट्स तो करने हैं एज पेरेंट्स बेस्ट, बट ये भी याद रखना कि उन एफर्ट्स की एक लिमिटेशन है. इट्स लाइक अगर आपको मान लो आज लाइक कोई भी बड़ा सा मैं काम दे दूं, ठीक है, फॉर एग्जांपल अब आपको कोई एक कार उठाने को मैं बोल दूं, तो अब 10 लोग उठा रहे हैं, तो उसमें आपका रोल है, बट अगर आप अकेले लग जाओ कि मैं अकेले उठा सकता हूं, तो आप नहीं उठा सकते, आपको अपनी लिमिटेशन भी पता होनी चाहिए। तो आपका अगर बहुत सारी चीजें हैं तो आपका कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन भी है, बट अगर आप सोचो कि मैं खुद अकेले कर दूं, द सेम वे फॉर दिस फैक्टर, पेरेंटिंग का एक फैक्टर है उसमें, बट अगर पेरेंट्स सोचे कि बाकी चीजों से कोई मतलब नहीं है, मैं ही सब कुछ कर दूंगा, तो देन that would be just out of touch with reality. But that's not the reality. So do your best, but remember that you have to just be modest. Parents basically need to make peace with the fact that not much is in our control. Okay, a large part of it is just simply out of your control. So this is something that need to be understood. Okay.
Okay, so for becoming a parent, we should also realize that genes are going to play a very, very important role in the life of the child.
Sorry, genes, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Think about this. Why do you think two siblings, they turn out so different? If parenting had such an amazing role, they must turn out to be almost identical, right? Because the same parents. But there are some people say my two children are North Pole and South Pole. Why does that happen? Because they were born pretty different, right? And that's why even if you put them in the exact same environment, they will still be very, very different people. Okay. Yeah. All right. And next I'll go to Mranmay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just thinking about this equality thing that we spoke.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I've not still tried it, but I feel that at times, I feel people will take you for granted if, I have had instances where, say your subordinates or people who are little lower in hierarchy than you, if you try and, with that intention that you want to have that equality and you are trying to, keep it equal with you and your subordinate, eventually they will take you for granted. And they will think that, okay, ye to aise bhi kuch bolti nahi hai, so it is okay to, have, do whatever you want, or it's okay to not listen to her or something like that. So that is one thing. And even with the kids, I have realized I try and keep it my kids are really small now, but I try and keep explaining things or asking them things, like asking them for their opinions, suggestions. But at times there are moments where you just literally want them to listen at that second. You have no time for explanation. So it's like they're going to touch something or do something, and if they get used to this pattern of explaining and then listening to it, explaining and then listening to it. So there have been times where without explanations they don't listen. So they will do something, and then after that you'll have to explain that why you said that. So these are the two challenges that are presently coming to my mind with the topic that we spoke about.
So we'll go back to some of the things that I discussed in the principles. So first one was about the boss, right? You said that when you're the boss, when you're the one leading, and if you try to be too equal, then they take you for granted. Now, the trouble with that is that no principle will solve all the problems. So that principle is the guiding force, which is how you look at them and deep down how you treat them. But then I also said that there are cultural hierarchies, that you are actually higher up in the decision-making hierarchy, right? You are higher up. So for that part, certain rights do come to you, which is you can call some shots, you can make some decisions, you can put some deadlines, you can decide some things that need to be done. You can even decide some values which need to be taken care of. And if they don't, you can hold people accountable. So that gives you the right to hold somebody accountable. So you can, from a completely equality space. So equality is more about a human to human level, that even though I'm your boss, I'm not above you as a person. That's the basic thing. And that's what I wanted to highlight today. But now that I'm your boss, it means that I can hold you accountable for this task, because you signed up for this. You signed up to be part of this organization. You signed up to be led by me, right? Be led by you or be led by the bosses. So in that sense, you have all the right to hold them accountable. And for that, you have to balance this part of being understanding and being very, very assertive also, being very strong. Okay, this will not be okay. And if this, like people say, if something happens repeatedly, it will not be accepted. There can be some consequences, and the consequences could be anything, right? We could find somebody else to do it, or we could, there could be some cut in the salary or something, depending on what the policy is, right? So you can discuss accountability, consequences, all of those things while treating that person completely equally. Because in that sense, you also are you're being neutral. Because if the same approach was applied to you by the boss, you would also accept it. Okay, you know what? Yes, I am an equal to my boss, but if I don't do the job right, then it's okay. I can be punished too. And you should be able to take that punishment well, right? So this is equal for everybody in that sense, okay? And the second question about the children, and yes, you're right. Sometimes you want immediate compliance for things. For example, if they're about to hurt themselves or do something very extraordinarily dangerous or embarrassing, maybe, then you just want them to stop immediately. So for that, I already said that at times it will be absolutely necessary, and it would be the issue would be of very high importance. So the question, and again, parent-child is a cultural hierarchy, not a fundamental one. So in that sense, if your judgment says that it's absolutely necessary and the issue is of very high importance, yes, you will use your authority, and that's fine. And that's completely fine. But the question is, are you able to defend that judgment? So you should be able to defend that for yourself. And if other people ask you, like if I ask you tomorrow, Mrunmay, why did you use your authority? You must have good enough reasons. It must not come out of basically ego or just your preference for power because you want it your way. You must have good reasons behind making that judgment. And that's how you should be able to basically defend your use of authority, right? That's the core thing. Next, I'll go to Astha.
Hello.
Hi, Astha.
Hi. I have 4-year-old child. So, बच्चे सुनते ही नहीं आजकल, and especially for screen time. Like I am a doctor and I have to be continuous on WhatsApp for suggesting patient with some medicines or something. So she is like, अगर आप देख रही हो तो मैं भी देखूंगी, and I want to keep her away from screen. So sometimes I have to scold her. That's the only thing I am left with, and I feel bad about it. But
बच्चे की बात तो सही है कि आप देख सकते हैं.
But like, yeah, I can't avoid it.
No, that's understandable.
How you have to treat your 4-year-old child equally? I want to know that thing.
No, I must specify here. The equality first comes as a fundamental way you look at the other person. That's more like it. So basically, the same thing applies here. Like I just said to her, if you have to use your authority, that's fine. Sometimes you do have to. And in this case also, you're right. You have to draw boundaries. You have to cut down their screen time. But if I ask you, why are you doing it? Then you have good reasons for it, because it's not healthy for them, right? For their lifestyle, they want to be able to do the other things, which is go out, play, interact, or like even do their homework, sleep in time, and have their food, and not just spend all the time in their phone. So you have good reasons to use your authority, and that's what we want to get. I am not saying at all that leave, because I already said there are cultural hierarchies and they are inevitable and they're useful also, because as a parent, it's your duty to sometimes draw boundaries, because the child could be hurting themselves, right? So if the boundaries that you have placed for your child, whatever the hours that you've decided or the activities that you've decided, if they are reasonable, then you should be able to do it. But the question is how you do it. And for that, like you said, sometimes it does get, you do scold. And for that, I would say, once you do have the authority, you can find a way to have better approach to applying authority, which is you actually don't need a lot of anger. Think about this. Most of your anger that you are using while scolding the child or whatever the emotions are, they are not actually making you a better boss in the house. They are just a reflection of your internal state, that you are annoyed in this moment. That's why you're scolding. It's not making your authority better. For authority, you don't actually need much anger. You just need to be very strict. You need to have a straight face. You need to be able to give consequences. You need to have a stern stance. If you want good authority, you can do that very calmly. You can do that with just strength of your voice and your decisions. Okay. So suggestion would be, so there are two separate things. You have to manage your own emotions, but still be very strong outside. Okay, so that would be the way to really be a reasonable, calm, but still a strong boss or somebody higher up in the hierarchy. Okay?
Okay.
That's the
Thank
answer.
you.
Yeah. Okay, next I'll go to Pavni.
Hi, Shridhar. Very
Hi.
nice session. I
Thanks.
can totally relate to it. my question is, like in relationships, when they signed up for a relationship, like you said, there is and when you know that you put a lot more effort than them, then how does this requesting or treating them still equal work?
So you're talking about efforts here?
Yeah, efforts.
Okay. So actually, technically, efforts are a very different ball game, and I'll tell you why. Because efforts come from your own needs and desires and your commitment to something. If you're committed to something, your own personal needs and desires, and that's why efforts are more of an individual choice. And anybody has an individual choice to make more or less efforts, because there is no as such perfect rule book for saying that people have to make these many efforts. But when you're trying to when you're treating other people, while you're making common decisions, while you're deciding things, that's where equality of things come in. And again, the idea I basically say is that once you're equal, you're also equal in terms of making your individual own personal unique choices, even if those choices could be mistaken. So I, just like you have a choice, you have the equal right to make mistakes, I have the equal right to make mistakes also. So equality comes with the right to make mistakes too. Okay. So this is why the issue that you're talking about is a separate issue. It is the issue of a person not understanding the value or the importance of making the right efforts for a relationship. And that's a different journey. They need education in that. They need to understand why it's important to make efforts, why it's ultimately beneficial for them and for the relationship. But it's not an issue of equality. Technically, if a person is making those choices, it means you as a wife, or anybody as a wife, has ensured perfect equality, that we are equals. You can do certain things right and wrong. I can do certain things right and wrong. So in terms of status, the principle is not violated. But yeah, in terms of actual wisdom or actual relationship practices, there are many principles violated. So we cannot mix those two things. Yeah.
Okay.
Make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to talk about it later to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, if you have any follow-up question, you can ask, no problem. Something.
Like, see, okay, not just about the participation part, it's a bit, I think I have to work on it and write down my thoughts
Okay.
about this. Yeah.
No problem. Take your time.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I'll go to R. Khanna.
Yeah. Hi, Shridhar.
Hi.
This is Veena Khanna. I think you know me very well. We had sessions together.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you very much for giving this session. Frankly speaking, I apologize that this is the first time I'm attending, and it was so beneficial. And I'm just hoping, that I should continue this. It's really
Please do.
And this week I faced something and you were speaking about it, so I could really relate to it. Okay. And I could with Pavni also, and you also know, like I am totally agreeing, if I think it's an Asian culture that here the women are doing more efforts they are putting in their relationship or with their kids also. I'll be very open about it. So, and the men's in this session, and you are also, so you should not feel bad about it. But yes, our upbringing sometimes have in our culture that way, So maybe, we are facing such issues when we are, especially when we both were alone, nothing was as such. But when we are raising the kids, yes, then the challenges we face. Okay. But now today my focus is on my kids. Like my elder one, she is 15, and my younger one, she is like 12 and a half, so she's entering the teens. Frankly speaking, she's a very sweet child and very interactive, very understanding. But from the very beginning, she had two habits. Firstly, she used to, in the school, she used to steal some small things. And then I used to tell her that this is not correct, and I used to flag. I used to say you have to return it, to the respective person. Otherwise, I'm telling your teacher and everything. Then she used to do it. But then I realized, with the several warnings also, now also she has that habit of, telling lies or something, because we both are working. So when I assign her some work, I see to it that because of this online thing and everything, she's most of the time chatting. She is very extrovert and she really loves to speak to people. She loves to speak to us also. But when she doesn't know how to balance, how her studies are there, and right now the responsibility, or the ownership has not come yet.
What is the age? Sorry again.
She is 12 and a half.
12 and a half, yeah.
And yes, and she's in ICSE, so many studies are there. Sometimes I feel maybe I am wrong to put her in this curriculum, and I need to change. And frankly speaking, apart from the study part, we are very good. She shares. I'm telling, if she has a crush, also she shares with me. We have that beautiful relationship. But when it comes to
So your
studies,
worry core is that is it right now about studies, or is it about she still has the
yeah, she has that attitude. She just jumble up. वो झूठ है ना, ऐसे हर एक चीज में ऐसे ना कुछ तो स्टोरी स्कूप करने की उसकी आदत है, और वो ना सबको पता चलती है, लेकिन उसे लगता है वो बहुत स्मार्ट प्ले कर रही है, बट एक्चुअली वी ऑलवेज, उसकी दादी भी उसके साथ में, हमारे मदर इन लॉ भी रहते हैं, ही आल्सो सेज शी इज सच अ ब्यूटीफुल चाइल्ड एंड वेरी इंटरेक्टिव. हम उसको घर की कनेक्टर बोलते हैं, बिकॉज शी इज कनेक्टिंग विद ईच एंड एवरी पर्सन ऑफ द हाउस. बट ओनली थिंग आई फाइंड इज कि उसका ये कुकिंग अप स्टोरी स्टडीज में इसके वजह से बिल्कुल ध्यान नहीं है, that way it happens. So how to deal with it, because sometimes, frankly speaking, I never touched her, but last week was like I was literally, I hated her.
Okay, so before I answer that question, because actually somebody has asked for in the chat, because some people could be leaving, I'm first gonna share forms and then I'll continue with the answer. Okay, so
no issues.
Just give me a second. Let me just bring those forms. So I'm going to be sharing actually 3 links here. If anybody who finds these sessions useful and would like to make any donation contribution, please do. That helps us grow better and make our team bigger, and just do this at a better scale. So where is that? Everyone. So first is that link for donation. Please save it. Then second is, if anybody is looking for, if somebody is going through really tough things which are like deeply painful for them and complex problems, then you must come for individual counseling, whether you come to us or somebody else. Like, this is just one option. This is that. And finally, the homework for this meeting. So that's like a Google form, and the third link would be the homework for this meeting. So please save this link. And the question is about the child cooking up stories. And by the way, I must tell you, sometimes children do it for no reason, no apparent reason, right? Because it's not like you're scolding them. It's not like you're actually hitting them or something. They're just doing it out of habit. Sometimes you develop that bad habit just for your convenience, or sometimes because so many times when you say the other thing, you can get a different reaction, or sometimes it's just the easy way out. So your goal there would be to first really sit down and have very deeper conversations with her. You must have tried for now, but you have to go deeper. Try to reflect on each incident. So think of it like this, that in ratio of the intensity of problem, you have to find time for the solution, which is, if the problem is consistent and continuing, then you have to continue to work on it. Every time this happens, you sit down and you talk about what happened, why she said the way she is. You repeat the values that are good. And sometimes like hitting would be I know that happens out of emotion, but there can be some consequences too. Consequences would be, and you can decide your own consequences. Sometimes it's taking away some privilege or something, or sometimes it's simply that if you don't do this, then for us, like certain activities are barred. So there are a host of reasonable consequences, which are not too strong, not too destructive, mild consequences basically that you can use. But in the long run, even consequences won't help. Consequences only give you some short-term discomfort to discourage you. But in the long run, what will happen is she really needs to see how lying or changing things can lead to bad consequences for her. Let's say it could be a loss of reputation, people not taking her that seriously, and ultimately people not believing her, which happens very commonly. You ultimately people doubting everything like you are now, because you're always that suspicion that she could be actually changing something.
Yeah, I explained her this.
Yeah,
that
so
you are losing trust of us or any of the people around you.
yeah.
Actually.
So, but you now need to do this in more and more details, because ultimately, think about this. Each human being is self-serving in the nature that they want to preserve their interests. So, right now for her, the argument for truth is not strong enough, right? Why should I say the truth? But if the argument in the favor of truth becomes really strong in her mind, she would naturally go towards it. Okay. In fact, by the way, I can suggest you a book there. It's a book called Lying. That's the name of the book, by Sam Harris. Write that book down. That's an amazing book, because I've heard a lot of summaries of that book. I haven't read that fully, but that book has amazing arguments why even white lies are problematic. Lying is problematic, and I completely agree with most of those things. And it has personally changed me. Like now, even if I've now tried to, for personal life, I don't use even small excuses as much as I can. I try to stay as truthful as I can with people, because I understood a much deeper argument behind saying the truth. So what she needs she needs to understand why truth is more important. So do buy that book. First, you should read it so that you can talk in a much deeper manner with your child, and hopefully she can read it too. Okay, so
Sure.
that
It's
would
a
really help.
Lying, right, by Sam Harris.
Yeah, Lying by Sam Harris. Okay.
Okay.
In fact, there are videos too. You can go to YouTube and find videos too. So you can get the wheels rolling there. You'll know what he talks about. But yeah, do buy the book. Okay.
Sure, will do. Thank you very much, Shridhar.
All right. So now I'll take one last question. So, okay, Sheetal, I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, hi Shridhar.
Hi, Sheetal.
Yeah, so my question is like in Indian culture, we have this practice of respecting elders because of like just in the hierarchy, they are obviously elder to us and we are supposed to respect them, not back answer. And personally, I don't agree with this. Like you should respect someone because of their age. But I think like in society, like I'm now more worried, like should I pass on this to my kids? Should I tell them to respect elders or I shouldn't? Or I mean, what's the right thing to do in terms of?
Because here you may get a little greedy also, right? Because अगर उल्टा सिखा दिया तो मैं कहीं मुझे respect करना बंद ना कर दें. So what if it backfires? So, but yes, here I also agree with the same thing, that respect is not based on any particular attribute, whether it's age, color, caste, creed, religion, whatever, or position, rank. Respect everybody, and like we discussed, if we are all equal, we need to have this inherent respect for everybody, just the existence itself. Anybody is human, they must be respected. So yes, you're teaching them the right thing, and do pass that on, do believe that, because ultimately you're not taking it away from the elders, you're just affording that to everybody else. Think of it like this. So you're not saying don't respect them, continue to respect them, but also respect everybody else and respect yourself, right? So you're actually enhancing the value, not taking away from it, right? But yes, with that, the parallel value is you should also be able to question everybody and criticize everybody, right? So if you can respect everybody, you can hold anybody accountable too. And you can question in the sense that if you find something wrong, if somebody is violating something, whoever that is, you should be able to talk about it, say it, express it, right? Or at least think of it. Because sometimes the other person will not take it. You don't have to go out to everybody and criticize them, but at least in your own analysis, you should be able to see, okay, you know what, okay, that is wrong. Just because an elder is doing it does not make it right. Okay. So in that sense, respect everybody, but you can question also everybody. So these would be the balancing values. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think I can take one more. Sumita Gupta. I'm going to unmute you.
Hello.
Hi, Sumita.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I attended your session for the first time and it was very nice.
Thanks.
I came in contact with you through Rishabh, actually.
Okay.
Your brother.
Okay.
My question is like day before yesterday, I just had a word with a new mother and she gave me a new perspective. My perspective was that when you come in touch with people whom you get certain negative vibes, so you should adjust. because there are people where you need them at certain level. Maybe there are teachers, then there can be elders and other people. She gave me a new perspective. She told me that why one needs to be with people who are giving you negative vibes. Say bye to them. Now my question is, how to approach this second way, and which is a better way? Because ultimately what I have realized, even if when you were in school, there were a certain kind of teachers whom you were not happy with because they used to have that kind of vibe which doesn't make you comfortable to talk to them. So is it good to teach our kids to adjust with people around with negative vibes, or should they say bye to them? That's my question.
I think the answer here would be a balance of multiple things, because there will be no one policy for this. Because think about this, those negative vibes that you're talking about, are they really negative? What if it's just in your mind? What if you're actually exaggerating something in your mind? So, and you cut off on that basis, that could lead to a very miserable life, right? Because let's say even somebody joked with you and made a small, let's say, joke about your appearance. Now you can interpret that as a negative vibe, but it was something completely casual, and maybe it should not have taken like a negative vibe. So that would be the first question: is it really negative? And you have to really be able to see, oh, negative means that person is genuinely, repeatedly malicious or doing something against you. So most of the times that's actually not the case. Usually you are doing, saying, and acting in a manner which is also a factor in the equation, because people don't wake up in the morning trying to be negative to you. That can happen, but it rarely does, where people just on the first look, they don't like you and they treat you that way. That does happen, but that occurrence is actually very, very small. So most of the times you have also something to do with it. And then there's your perception. What if you're interpreting a lot of negativity? So question your own judgment, your own questions first, or your own behavior first. That would be, and then the next question would be, what is the intensity of the negativity? If it's little, if something tolerable, do adjust, because that actually makes you a stronger person. That actually teaches you to tolerate more. So if the overall intensity is low and the issues are not that important, you can put up with it, make peace with it, because life is never going to be fully comfortable. Life is never going to be completely easy. There are going to be difficult people. You can't just escape. But if the negativity is continuous, consistent, one-sided, and really high intensity, then of course it makes sense to walk away from the equation, interact less, and if possible, even cut off. So the answer really depends on all of those things. What's your judgment about all the questions that I just laid out, right? So, yeah. Okay, so I think time is over for today. I am so happy to see you all again. Many people are coming back again and again, and that makes me really happy. So whoever is new here, please come back again next Saturday. And and if you do the homework, we'll meet actually 2 days earlier, which is on Thursday. Okay, so I'm very, very grateful for this. Really enjoyed today's session, and hope you did too. And with that, let's come to a close. Okay, all right, everybody. Bye-bye. These videos can help you to some degree, but if your problems are really serious or painful, you should come for counseling. We now have a team of psychologists who can help you and your family live a much better life. Here are some feedbacks from our clients. If you wish to take counseling from us, go to our website page www.shridharlifeschool.com/counsel. Click on this link and fill this application form. We will get back to you soon.